Okay, this video is going to talk about functions and present them in a pretty elementary way, but this is the intro to functions for COP 3223 at University of Central Florida. So before we even code the functions, let's find out why we'd use functions. There are actually quite a few reasons we'd use them, but in this class we're going to focus on that functions give us better application organization, and functions allow us to reuse some of the code that we've rewritten. Okay, so the first function we're going to talk about has no parameters and no return values. Okay, so the very first thing we write for a function is the return value. And if we have no return values, we write this word called void. And that means we're not going to return any values. Now you can think of this return value thing as kind of a contract with the compiler. This is the return value here. Okay, so that's the return value. The next thing is the actual function name. So my function. And I'm sure you remember that with variables, we said that the technical term was the identifier. Same thing here. This is actually the identifier, but we normally just say function name. Okay. And finally, we have the parameter list, and it's going to be between an open parenthesis and a closed parenthesis. Now notice there's nothing there. Let's say params here. And we said that we would not return anything and we would not take any parameters. So the function starts here at the open curly brace and ends here at the closed curly brace. It's very similar to main, that I taught you that your program starts at the open curly brace and ends at the closed curly brace. Okay, so notice that this has some similarities to other things we've done. Remember if statements, we had the if keyword, open paren, close paren, open curly, close curly. Okay, and here we do stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just so that this is a little bit more readable, I'm going to go ahead and put this back to a more normal way a function normally looks. So that's normally the way a function that takes no parameters and returns no values is going to look. Notice back in main that main is special. It actually does return something, and we're going to be talking about that shortly. But instead of my function, let's say talk about the weather. Okay, and so if we're going to talk about the weather, we'll use some printfs. It is hot today, Sunday afternoon. For sure it's hot. It hasn't rained for several days. I'm going to put a period up here. But we are close to fall, and temps should drop, which would be actually really pleasant. Okay, now, so here I have this function named talk about the weather that returns nothing and takes no parameters. Remember I said that's the start of the function and that's the end of the function. Now if I go ahead and run this program, and let me put that up. This always starts in my other window, my other screen monitor. You don't see anything, and that's surprising to me because I thought that this came first and therefore I should have seen it. But what you have to remember is that your program starts here at the open curly brace right below main. Okay? And everything you see down here is blank space. So there's no reason for this function to run. Okay? Remember, we've been using printf and scanf and I think rand and srand in this class. Those are the 4 functions we've used. And before they even fire off, you've got a column. Remember down here when we did scanf, we had to put scanf or it wouldn't have gotten called. The same thing for talk about the weather. If we don't do this, it won't get called. Okay, this invokes the function and runs it. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this now. And you'll notice that it did say it is hot today, it hasn't rained for several days, and so forth. So what happens is when it hits this, it says, oh, I need to use this function called talk about the weather. So it goes up here, runs this, remember, the function starts here and ends here. It does all the stuff in between, and then it comes back here and continues on its merry way. Now what we're going to do is create another function, talk about my cars. The contract says we're not going to return anything, and we're not going to give it any parameters. Okay, so printf. I have 2 cars. Printf. One is a Nissan Versa that is practical. Printf. The other is a Jeep Wrangler, and I took the doors off. It's actually a fun car. Okay. So now what we see is we have talk about the weather here. We have talk about my cars here. And we would predict that since those 2 things come first, we should be able to see them, right? But we still only see the discussion about the weather. The reason is we didn't call the talk about my cars. So if we do this, we'll actually see it happen now. Okay? See, it says it's hot today and so forth, the weather stuff, then it talks about the cars. Okay, so there are 2 things about functions we have. One is the actual function body, which does the work, that one, and this one. Then we have the call, or the invocation of that function. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say printf, we are done with the talk about the weather function. And here we'll say printf, we are done with the talk about my cars function. Okay, now here's what happens. Like I've told you before, the program starts right here. Then it hits this point. It says, oh, I have to go up and do this. I have to execute this talk about the weather function. So it executes the talk about the weather function. Once it's done with that, it resumes its previous path. Now it's going to print this out. Okay. After it does that, it encounters this talk about my cars function. It says, oh, I've got to go ahead and execute that. So it comes up here, does everything in here inside of that function body. Once it's done with that, it resumes, it goes on its merry way and does this. Okay, so let's go and run this now and just make sure that everything I've told you is true. Okay, the first 3 lines are the weather. Then it says we are done with talk about the weather function. Then it talks about the cars, and finally it says we are done with the talk about my cars function. So this is your very first exposure to functions. And notice that if I had all this stuff pasted in to main, it would actually be quite a bit messier, right? The fact that I've able to put these 3 printfs here and sort of encapsulate them, and then encapsulate all these into a nice, neat function, it actually really does help me organize my program. Okay, so let me tighten this up now so we can continue on with our discussion. So sometimes a function is going to give you something back. Okay, so let's create a function that says get a number. So what we're going to do is ask the user for a number. Please enter a number. Our old friend scanf. Okay. Now, our plan is to return back to the caller a number. This is our contract. What it says is we are going to return back a number. If we don't return a number, the compiler will not continue. It'll return a big fat error message and nothing will happen. So we have to do a return here. So we can return number. And what this is going to do is it's going to send whatever the user typed in here back. So now we need a variable here to catch it in. Okay, we're going to say num equals get a number. Now, I use an analogy in my classrooms that this is like second base throwing something back to home plate. And this is like holding up your glove. So it gets thrown from here back to home plate. This is the catcher. And the softball lands in his glove and he's got it. This is an assignment. Remember we talked very first week about assignments. This is an assignment. So what's happening is whatever this guy is going to return gets assigned into the num variable. And just to prove that we got something back, the value we got back from get a number and stored into the num variable is %d num. Okay? So let's go ahead and run this, and it should work correctly. So now, notice, please enter a number, and I'm gonna put in, say, 12. And now what it should do is say the value we got back from get a number and stored into the num variable is 12. Okay, and that's exactly what it said. So let's go through this. Let's go step through this. First, we called the talk about the weather function. It came up here and it talked about the weather. Once it was done, meaning it got here, resumed on its merry way. And the printf said we are done with the talk about the weather function. Then it encountered this and said, oh, I've got to talk about my cars. So it came up here and did talk about my cars. But now we have this closed variable, this closed curly brace, which means the function is over. And we come back here and we resume our previous path. It says we are done with the talk about my cars functions. Now this is a slightly different. These are functions, and this is a function. But remember, this function actually returns something. So here we're poised to catch it. We've got our softball glove up, but we still have to call get a number. Here's get a number. it says printf, enter a number, it does scanf, gets the number, and now it returns it. Remember? Because we have an int here, that's our contract, we have to return an integer. So now that value, oops, sorry. Now that value was assigned into the num variable that we declared here, okay? So now num is going to have whatever we typed in. And for the example, I typed in 12, but it could be anything. You could type in any number. Finally, it says the value we got back from get a number and store into the num variable is whatever, %d, whatever they typed in, okay? So now we're going to do a little bit, we're going to be a little bit more subtle here and do a bit more. Let's present a menu. Let's see. Ask for favorite color. Okay. So what we're going to do is ask them for their favorite color. And this void is wrong. I actually want to return an int. Okay. So this is our contract. We're going to have to return a value. So what is your favorite color? printf red. You could actually do this in one printf if you wanted to. It would be up to you. Remember, what we've talked about is that there are lots of ways to do this stuff, and a lot of times it just depends on what's more readable to you as the programmer. Printf your choice. Now, scanf %d, oops, you guys are. So now, hopefully the user has typed in 1, 2, 3, or 4, and now we're going to return choice, right? Just like before. We're going to ask for their favorite color, and it's going to return one of these values, 1, 2, 3, or 4. The only problem, however, that we've seen is that they could type -4 or 99 or something. So this is a perfect opportunity to enforce the fact that we really only want a value from 1 to 4. So we've done this in class. We're going to put a do while loop wrapper around this. While choice is less than 1 or choice is greater than, oops, greater than 4. Okay. So this is going to ask for their favorite color. Let's say color. Declare that variable so we can catch it. Remember, when it sends something back, what do we call that thing? Ask for favorite color. Okay. Remember, we've always got to have some sort of variable that's going to catch the value that a function passes back. And we're just going to say printf, you chose choice number %d. Now notice we're not saying red, green, or whatever. We're just telling them what choice they chose. Okay? So this was a simple function. We let them type in any number. This function was more complicated because we enforced the restriction that they can only pick 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and clean up this program just a bit and get rid of this. I'll leave the functions up there in case I need them again. But what I'm going to do is create a function that says show choices. So let's go up here. And we'll go ahead and print it. Here are your choices. This is actually going to be a pattern that happens over and over again in this class, that we're going to give some sort of menu of choices. Stand on your head. Here again, you could use a single printf if you wanted to. I think it's a lot cleaner. Go ahead and use multiple printfs. Eat a bag of rocks. Printf 3. Sing a song of your favorite food. And lastly, we'll make something up that's just equally as silly. Run circles around your car. Okay, so all we've done here is we've created a little menu. And the menu is just going to show choices. So let me just kind of run this. And believe me, this is not going to do much. Okay, so it doesn't really do much. It just shows those choices. Okay. But now we have to get the choice. So here we're going to create a function that says get user choice. Okay, we won't take any parameters, and we'll say choice. We'll declare a local variable called choice. We'll say printf your choice, scanf, %t choice. And remember, we have a contract up here, so we have to return an integer, and the integer we're going to return is called choice because that's what we asked the user. Okay. So now, user choice, say user choice equals get user choice. Remember, this is the function. It's going to send something back. This is an assignment. So whatever is sent back is going to get assigned into that variable. And just so we can the choice that the user made was %d user choice. So let's kind of run this guy and make sure everything's working correctly. And don't forget, we like to make sure that we run every so often. Because if we write a huge program with 10,000 lines and then we try to figure out what's going wrong, it's very difficult. Okay, 3. Now, the problem with this is that we could actually say -4 and it wouldn't know that there was a problem with this because this is not enforcing choice. So let's go ahead and say do we've done this before. You've seen me do this. Well, choice less than 1 or choice less than 4. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and run it and see if we can make sure that we're not able to type a -4. Okay, -4, and it asks us for our choice again. 99 asks us for our choice again. 2 is fine. But what if our menu had something besides 4 choices? Here we're assuming we have 4 choices. But it's possible we might have 2 choices, 3 choices, 5 choices, 19 choices. And so this code is really very, very limited in that it only knows how to respond if we have from 1 to 4 choices. What we really need to do is make sure that that guy is able to respond and adjust depending on how many choices we have. So now I'm going to teach you how to create a function that takes a parameter. Okay, so num choices is a parameter I'm going to give it. And num choices is going to limit us. So if num choices is 5, this will be 5. And I'll take a choice from 1 to 5. If num choices is 6, it'll be a choice from 1 to 6. If num choices is 2, it'll be a choice from 1 to 2. Now you'll notice that this now is going to be incorrect because it's, remember, this now is a contract. Just like this is a contract. This is a contract with the compiler. And what that says is that everybody now needs to give some integer number telling it how many choices. So we're going to say 4. That's how many choices we have. And we're going to run it. We'll say -1, 0. It's keeping asking me 5, 6, 7. But when I say 4, it's like totally good. Okay? But if I did say 5 here, it would actually let me type in 5, even though that's not one of the choices. Up here, see, right? So I could actually make a mistake as the programmer and let it give me 5, and that would be incorrect. So this always, as you're writing this software, you need to make sure that that matches how many choices that something like this is giving you. Okay. Now, get all this sort of cleaned up, and we're going to do some math now. Let's say add first number, second number. See, now we're taking 2 parameters. Okay, so it's taking a first number and a second number. This will be subtract. Let's go ahead and flesh this out. Int answer equals, it says add, so second. Now we have to return the answer. Right, and the reason we're going to return the answer is since we have this contract. Okay. So we're just going to do a copy and paste because it'll help us get through these functions. Just make this minus. We'll do a multiply. And finally, we'll do a divide. And remember, divide is the /. Multiply is the asterisk. Divide is the /. Okay, so for, let's see, 1, 2. So printf. Enter number, and I'll say enter first number. Do a scanf, get that number. Okay. And now we're going to do this with the second number. Okay, so now we've got 2 numbers that the user entered in. And let's go ahead and give it some sort of a, let's say, result. Okay, so result equals add num1, num2, and now result. So add is a function, right? We're going to send in the first number, we're going to send in the second number, and what it's going to send back is the answer. So this is going to be an assignment into that result. So now we're going to put a printf. We're going to say the answer of %d is %d. Okay, now num1, num2, answer. Oh wait, should be result, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and test this guy out now. And just make sure we got it. Okay, first number we're going to say 10. Second number we're going to say 17. So the answer of 10 plus 17 is 27. Perfect. Now we do have all the other operations that we created. Enter. Okay, so we're going to ask for first number, second number, and third number again, except this time instead of adding, we're going to subtract. And then we'll say minus. Okay, let's just make sure this works. Okay, 12.99, that's add, right? 4, 3, so 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, let's do multiply. Here instead of that, it'll be multiply. And instead of the multiply symbol, I'm going to actually put like a little X there. So while we're at it, let's go ahead and do divide. Divide. And I'm not sure if I can actually get a division symbol in here. Hold on, let me see if I can get a real symbol. Okay, there we go. Got the division symbol put in there. You could just put a // if you wanted to, but so let's go ahead and run this program now and just make sure it's doing what we want it to do. Oops, I have some sort of error here. I must have misspelled something. Okay, it's complaining about multiply. Multiply here. Let's just make sure I didn't misspell something. Yeah, I did. See how I misspelled that? That's why it gave me an error. Okay, so just make sure when you look at this stuff that when you get errors like that. Okay, so this is adding. Okay, subtraction. Multiply, and division is, okay. What would have been really nice is to say printf now to add, see, because they don't know what they don't know why they're entering these numbers in. So this would be a really nice touch. Multiply. So let's go ahead and try this again now. Just make sure that all this works. And really, a lot of times, now to add, without that, the program would have still worked. But a lot of times, people judge you based on how slick the program is. So without that, now to add, now to subtract, some people are gonna say, "Hey, what's wrong with this program? It doesn't work very well at all." Okay. So now let's review. We had these functions up here. They took 2 parameters and they returned 1 value. Now, the rule in C, you can only return 1 value anyway. You can take multiple parameters, but you can only return 1 value. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take your adventure game that you wrote. It's a lot of code. Or maybe you just watched me write it. And let me go ahead and run this. We're going to use functions to clean it up and organize it better, okay? It's a pretty simple game. You have 3 situations, 3 sets of choices, and 3 responses. So first, get rid of that. Let's create a function called show situation 1. And this is where we actually show situation 1. So let's paste that up here. And now Obviously, you're not going to see it unless we call it show situation 1. Okay? And if we run this, it's going to look identical to what we've already just seen. See how you can see the situation? The program doesn't do anything different now. But in a way, it's a little bit better organized because we've shuffled that out there. Now let's create a function called show choices. And here we're going to display all the choices. Okay? So here we do that. We'll say show choices 1. And let's run this, make sure it still works. See, everything's the same. All we've done is shuffle this stuff off to these functions. So they're like, things that are of like function are grouped together. Now this is kind of an issue. We've already created a function called getUserChoice. So let's do this, getUserChoice. And remember, this means we're going to have to return an integer. And that's our contract. And we want to know how many choices they have, right? Didn't we do this already? So what we're going to do is we're going to say choice, declare a local variable called choice. And in a do loop, we're going to enforce the range. Printf, please enter a number between 1 and %d. Now we didn't do this in the last example, but this is actually going to be much nicer because then the user knows they've got to say enter a number between 1 and 3 or 1 and 4 or so forth. Choices scanf %d choice. So we're going to do this while choice is less than 1 or choice is greater than none choices, right? So if they're out of range, we're going to keep doing this while they're out of range. Finally, we have the contract up here to return an integer. So we'll return choice, okay? So now we can, this is going to be the first function that is going to be reusable. So far, our functions have only illustrated their power in organizing our code. Now, we're going to be able to reuse this getUserChoice several times in this program. Okay? So here we'll say choice equals getUserChoice. And we have 3 choices here. So we can get rid of that little nasty old scanf. So this actually should still function the exact same way as our program always has. Okay. Now, do you see how much easier this is to understand how this program is working? So now finally we're going to respond, right? We're going to respond to the choice. So now let's say respond to choice 1. The problem is, unless it knows what their choice was, we won't know how to respond. So we have to send choice in as a parameter. Okay? So let's create our respond to choice function. Okay? I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this. And notice I renamed it to CH just because I felt like it. The main thing is I want to just illustrate there's no relationship between what you name it here and what it's named here. There's no relationship. Okay? Now, this is going to work. We don't have to respond. We don't have to return anything. All we have to do is print out. Now, one of the problems is this is not actually going to compile. The main reason is because score is declared down here. So there's this thing called scope. When we declare variables within a function, they only live between the open curly and the closed curly, okay? So what that means is when we go up to this function here, it won't know what score is. So for that reason, we have to change score and declare them at the top so everybody has access to them. This is called a global variable, okay? That's because everybody has access to them, so we put them up at the top, and then we get rid of this here, okay? So now, look how neat this is. Anybody can look at this and understand what's going on. You show the situation, you show the choices, you get the user choice. Remember, this is assigning it back, and you respond, right? Then you show the score. And since this is global, everybody has access to it, right? So let's go ahead and run this and make sure everything is working correctly. Oops, let's see, respond to choice 1. I did something wrong. Let's see, I must have a typo of some sort. Respond to choice 1, correct. I have a typo. So anytime you have a typo, just check what you've done and make sure everything matches up. Okay, so you're not going to see any difference in the program. The only difference is that this guy is now organized so it's easy to understand what the program is doing. Okay, now let's go ahead and say show situation 2. And we're just going to reorganize the second situation. Put this up here. Okay. Now we got to call it, right? So, oops, got my caps lock on. This is situation 2 now. Okay. Now we're going to show choices 2. I'm going to cut this out here and make a function up here called show choices 2. Okay. We're following the same pattern. Remember, programming has a pattern. Okay. Now for the code reuse, we get to reuse this guy here. Okay, we spent a lot of time writing that function. Now we just get to use it. We don't have to rewrite it. This is called code reuse. Finally, respond to choice 2. We'll cut this stuff out. We'll make a function up here. And paste all this stuff in. Oh, I've made a mistake. This should have been, remember, it's taking a parameter. So I renamed all this stuff. Just make sure it's all consistent or it won't compile. Okay, so that actually should all be perfect. Notice we have this sequence, Notice how similar they are to each other. And notice how easy to understand they are now that we've put everything into functions. And notice that we got to reuse this here and here. So let's go and test this. We don't want to go too far without testing. Okay, 2. See, the program doesn't look any different. It looks the same as it did the first time we ran it. The only difference is now we have organized it very well and we're able to take advantage of code reuse. Finally, we're going to say show, oops, void. Void, remember, means we're not going to return anything. Situation 3. Let's cut this stuff out. Paste it in up there. Don't forget we got to call it here. So here we got to call it. We say show situation 3. So it comes up. Now we're going to say show choices 3. Create a function called show choices 3. Oh, let's paste that code in there. Now remember, if we don't call it, it won't happen. Show choices 3. And here we're going to do our get choice. Oops, misspelled it. Let's get choices. Get user choice, I guess. And I've got 3 choices there in that menu. Finally, respond to choice. Oops, 3, and I've got to send it my choice. Okay, so let's cut this out. Let's go up here and say respond to choice 3. Okay, and since I named that CH, all these need to be named CH. Right? They have to be the same. You got to be consistent. Okay. And that's it. I have actually, so this is actually called refactoring, when we take a program that already exists, and we make it better. We make the code better, at least. Notice how neat and clean this whole thing is. Let's go ahead and run it and make sure it works. Build and run. Oops, I have some sort of issue. I think that should be a capital T. Let's just make sure. Build and run. Okay, good. 2, 2, 2. You think after all this time I could get a decent score?